I think it's very important that the inmates that do have families be allowed, that their families be allowed to interact with them. Not only does it help them when they come out to be rehabilitated, but it helps them because they have somebody out here that's going to help them.
The only thing that the kids have in prison is their loved ones. And it's so important to have that human contact. And I get upset even when I think about it because, you know, not only the phone system, but the way the prison system is in general, where you're not allowed to touch your loved one, and you're not allowed to do this, and you're not allowed to do that. And the best way to reform these kids is love. And that is something I truly and strongly believe in. And a lot of people don't have the means to even go visit their loved ones.
Because like I said, I don't care what that person is or who they are, they're still family. And as a mother, that's still my child. To put the bottom line to that one, you know, the world could call him whatever, but he's still my child.
People on the street do time with their loved ones, right? It's not just the person inside that's doing that time, it's the family members, the loved ones that are doing that time together. And they need to be connected and communicate with each other in order to be able to manage to do that time, to get through that time.
I'm here to testify that the importance of being in contact with your loved ones who are behind bars. First thing is that in order for us to stay in good communication with them is to establish good relationships with them.
That contact from an institution with a family member can mean the difference between someone being able to handle that environment emotionally.
I would take 50 calls if that's what it took to help him survive and help him reform and help him know that he's loved, because that's the beginning of feeling good about yourself.
During my years of incarceration, Sundays were kind of a special day for me because that was phone call day. That was the days when I got to talk to my mother, my wife, my kids, to hear how they were doing. And that was really something to look forward to. It was very, very important. And I think, you know, there's something about the voice.
Phone call is pivotal when you're talking about being locked down in a facility and you've got family members out there who are concerned about you. It's the most important piece of communication going on in the system.
I am here to testify that the phone services for incarcerated people in Illinois are too expensive. I, as a first-hand account, am paying too much money to secure the prison phone service that it provides inmates the service to stay communicated with their families. Since most of the prisons are located in down south Illinois, and most of the people or the families and communities where the prisoners come from are from Chicago, it's really hard for us to go visit our family members who are locked up downstate. So the only other means of communication is to receive phone calls. Now, for some of us, it's too expensive for us to pay $4 for a 30-minute phone call from either the Cook County Jail or from a IDOC state penitentiary. So again, it's important for us to establish relationships with our families, and the only real means of communication is through telephone services. the phone calls are way too expensive. Most of the people who are locked up, they come from low-income communities, low-income neighborhoods, so it's really expensive. It's just a burden, a financial burden on our families for us to pay X amount of dollars every month just so we can hear our brothers' voices, our brothers and sisters' voices. And I really do think that Securus and IDOC profiting from poor people just so they can stay in contact with their family members is a complete disservice from public service. I mean, we're supposed to be trying to rehabilitate the people who are locked up, not trying to profit from them. And this plays into the whole prison industrial complex, given that they're making money off of people who are locked up. And not just for the people who are locked up, but the people who support the people who are locked up, the families. And that's the real impact.
So the only other option is to have that human connection is the telephone. And then they're charging you $8 something every single time you take a call. And I found it totally greedy that the system was using the phone calls to make money.
In the state of Illinois, there's about $12 million of revenues that correctional facilities have at their disposal as a result of the charges for these phone calls. And that nationally, when you take all of these correctional facilities together and you look at that the revenues exceed about $140 million. That's mind-boggling.
It makes it hard on the family, and especially when your person is many miles away. If you're up in Chicago and you got to go to Menard, Southern Illinois, Chester, Illinois, even from Champaign, Illinois, it's a 4.5 hour drive. So, I mean, and you know, so the phone calls help keep that bond, keep you in touch. Because sometimes you can't make that, and especially in the wintertime on those little country roads, you cannot make that 4.5 hour drive.
I was speaking of a female friend of mine who I've known who, in order just to speak to her husband who was incarcerated on the phone, how she would steal from stores and resell the merchandise just so that her kids can keep contact with their father. And I mean, even a situation like that, it was like, why would you do that knowing you can potentially end up in jail also? But it was like, that was the only way because he was far away from where they were. She didn't have money to go visit him. So in order, you know, just for the kids to keep contact with them, she would, whenever it was like time for phone bills, just go around, like I said, steal stuff from stores to resell it just to pay for the bills so she can speak to her husband.
They would call, your person would call you back, so then for say maybe an hour or so, you may have end up with a $20-$30 phone bill because you're trying to communicate with your person or inmate. And so if he got cut off more than twice, he could not call me back because of the cost of the call. And then we would have to wait maybe another 2 weeks for me to talk to him again on the phone.
What they do is you put money on your phone, it's like a calling card basically, and you put money on it, and then they call and it takes money out of it. You never know how much money actually they take out, or you never get a receipt, or you never get an estimate of how it is. Like a few minutes into the conversation, you might hear 1 minute left, and then that's it. Then they can call back again, but then they charge you another set of money. So
They are allowing these kids who need to hear their loved one's voice unlimited access to the phone because it's making them money. Every time that Luke called me, it's making them money. And that's just a travesty. Because, like I said, it's an emotional trap that they put you in. And so when I wouldn't take his call, I would feel horrible, and then he would feel horrible because he couldn't understand why I wasn't taking his call. Because he was a 21-year-old kid that really never made the connection between what it was costing me versus his emotional needs.
Like if you're on the phone and you're talking to an inmate, like if another person calls in on your call and they instantly say, okay, that might be a third party call, and they disconnect you, but you still get charged for that call. Even if they disconnect you, it's still a charge. Sometimes you couldn't hear on the phone was real low. Like when you're in the middle of talking, the phone would just automatically just hang up, and then they would still charge you for that call, and then the person will have to call back, and then it starts to charge all over again.
There's the human side of that. They want to hear your voice. They don't have anything to do, and so he was obsessed with talking to me. But on the other hand, I knew I couldn't afford to take his call every time that he called.
I would say probably give it a roundabout for my family $100 a month.
Yeah.
Cause I mean it's 9 of us, and he calls at least 3-4 of us every week, every month. So $100 times 12 is 1,200 times 20 years. Can we just round it out and say it's $20,000? That's really not going to the taxpayers of Illinois. It's really going to a private corporation, which is Secures. And I know that IDOC is profiting, what, 3/4 out of that? So they charge us $4. IDOC keeps $3 for their own operation costs, which no one really knows what is it going to. So we have to also be critical of that and question.
I really think they need to change the prices of the phones, because if someone is dealing with being incarcerated, then, I mean, if they can't talk to people, they get more frustrated. And the people on the outside are getting frustrated too, because you don't know what's happening to your loved ones, and it's not really anything else you could do besides go for the visits. The phone calls help because you're inside. They can call you, or either it is something on the phones, whereas you can just put money on the phone and they can call anybody. But again, that's not monitored. You don't get a receipt. You don't see how that money is used. We're getting charged higher rates because the jail system wants more money, or the phone system, whichever one is getting the most money out of it. I don't think that's fair. I think they should mostly lower the rates, and that way communication can be better between the inmates and family, loved ones.
But the main thing is to lower the cost of the phone, because with this, even though we're still in tough economic times, and so if you can do that, the inmates, the families, they could communicate and bond more together.
I don't know how they can make it more affordable, but I do feel like they're taking advantage of families and making lots and lots of money off of it.
So for my family who actually works, they're all working class family, having a phone call is really the only way that they can communicate with him, because even till now we can only see him about only 4 or 5 times a year. So, I mean, we really don't have enough time to go see him. And really the money is another issue that's really a big component to making it possible.
Well, I do understand they want to make the money, but to me that's just a crime.
So we're involved in a national campaign to try to reduce the charges of these phone calls, to get rid of site commissions. In New Mexico and New York, they've gotten rid of those kickbacks. They pay 5 cents a minute for a phone call. 5 cents a minute. For a half hour, that's $1.50. For 1 minute, that's a nickel. So we think it's time that that happened in other places. Now, fortunately, after about 20 years of a national campaign on this issue, the Federal Communications Commission has begun to take some action. Earlier this year, they put a cap, a limit on the per minute charges for out-of-state phone calls. Now they're beginning to investigate the charges for phone calls within the state, phone calls from jails and phone calls from the state prisons. So sometime in the next month and a half, we're going to make a submission on behalf of people in Illinois about the situation with phone call charges in our state. And we need the stories of people who have the experience of paying those fees, of having the experience of having their phone call cut off right in the middle when you're at a very, very important point of trying to communicate something to your family, right? You know these things happen. So we want to communicate these stories to the FCC and get them to come in and make some changes to the phone call charges to stop the companies and the Department of Corrections from gouging the pockets of poor people in Illinois. It's time for that to stop.